A woman sits alone in her chambers, candlelight dancing across her face. Catherine de' Medici has just learned something that shatters her world. The man she loved has finally betrayed her in a way that cannot be ignored. For years, she had been patient. She tolerated his mistress, Diane de Poitiers. But now, the betrayal has gone too far. The Bourbon princes are gaining dangerous power. The kingdom is fracturing. And Henri refuses to see the threat. He is blinded by passion, by the very people Catherine warned him about. So she makes the choice. In that cold, silent room, surrounded by books on astrology and poison, Catherine decides that love is a luxury she cannot afford. History would whisper about her decision for centuries. But what really happened that night? What was the line she crossed? Was it truly for power? Or was there something far more personal driving this legendary queen? Tonight, we're uncovering the untold story of Catherine de' Medici. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss this. Catherine arrived in France as a young bride from Italy, carrying the wealth of the Medici banking family. But gold meant nothing in a court that viewed her as a foreigner, an outsider. Young Henry wasn't even interested in this plain Italian girl. But Catherine had hunger, a hunger to understand the world around her. While noblemen dismissed her, she studied. She read philosophy, astronomy, and medicine. She learned court politics by watching, listening, remembering every word, every glance. She was constructing her own power, brick by brick, conversation by conversation, waiting for her moment. When Henry inherited the throne, he brought an uncomfortable truth. He had fallen completely under the spell of Diane de Poitiers. Diane was a noblewoman nearly 20 years his senior. She was everything Catherine was not in his eyes: confident, beautiful, experienced, and utterly dominating. She controlled his schedule, his decisions, his heart. She wore the royal jewels Catherine should have worn. She sat beside Henry at state functions, publicly claiming a position that belonged to the queen. But Catherine's response was masterful in its restraint. She didn't rage. She didn't weep in public. Instead, she became indispensable. She bore Henry children, the heirs he desperately needed. She took his mistress into her circle with a smile that never wavered. Catherine became the Queen of Shadow, the invisible hand guiding the kingdom while Diane received the king's jewels and affection. But inside, something was changing. The patient acceptance was slowly transforming into something darker. Every gift Henry gave to Diane was a dagger to Catherine's pride. Every public display of their relationship was another humiliation etched into her memory. She began keeping detailed records of everything: debts, betrayals, promises broken. Catherine was a woman who never forgot, and she never forgave. As the decades passed, France began to tear itself apart from within. The wars of religion were bleeding the nation dry. Different noble families aligned with different faiths. The powerful Bourbon princes were positioning themselves to seize the throne through military might and political manipulation. Catherine watched with growing horror as religious extremism consumed her children's judgment and clouded their vision. Her son Francis became weak and easily manipulated. Her son Charles was volatile and increasingly unpredictable. And all the while, Henry refused to listen to her warnings about the rising Bourbon threat. Catherine had spent decades supporting him, sacrificing her own desires, building alliances in his name. And now he wouldn't even grant her the courtesy of hearing her counsel on matters of the kingdom's survival. The irony cut deeper than any blade. She had given up her heart for the crown, had endured humiliation after humiliation for his comfort and his reign. Now the man she'd championed wouldn't even listen when the kingdom faced extinction. She had loved him, truly loved him, and that love had cost her everything. Some historians point to the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre as the moment Catherine finally abandoned her humanity. That August night in 1572, thousands of Huguenots, French Protestants aligned with the Bourbon faction, were systematically murdered throughout Paris and the countryside. The massacre would change France forever. It cemented Catherine's reputation as one of history's most ruthless and bloodthirsty figures. But here's what's often forgotten. Catherine's exact hand in the massacre remains historically debated and unclear. What we do know is that by this point, she had transformed from a patient, calculating player of politics into something far more desperate and dangerous. The careful lines she had drawn had become hopelessly blurred. And Catherine herself, the woman who had sacrificed love for power, found that power brought only isolation, regret, and a legacy forever stained by suspicions of horrors. She died alone, largely forgotten by the sons she had manipulated, and protected history would spend centuries debating whether she was a brilliant strategist protecting her family or a monster who let ambition consume her soul. Perhaps in the end she was both, and perhaps that's the real tragedy. Not that she crossed the line between love and murder, but that she had to